And we're on. So it's December 19th, 2018. You're in the garage. With me tonight is Scott Zielinski. Say hello, Scotty.
Hello, how's it going?
Oh, and Thaddeus Smith is popping in. Say that again, Thaddeus.
Hello.
Oh, there he is. All right, cool. Yeah, I wasn't. I think I was too busy talking to pick anything up.
I apologize.
So, well, if I tend to talk too much, yeah, fucking, I don't know, throw up a bat signal or something. You know, let me know. Say, yo, John, shut the fuck
I
up.
think you're good. I think you worry about that too much.
So, yeah, well, you want to direct the show without dominating it. You know,
Sure.
I already know my own thoughts. Hearing everybody else's thoughts is kind of important. On that, so Scotty, you missed last week. I don't know if you caught any of it. We were talking about antagonists last week. We were talking about the bad guy. The bad guy is the reason why we tell the story.
No,
right?
I didn't have a chance to see that one yet.
All right. Well, we barely unpacked it anyway. It's like such a. I understand why these podcasts are so popular, where they go 3 hours and they even barely touch the subjects they're talking about, because like something like that, you could go on forever about.
Yeah.
We can.
Someone like Joe Rogan can afford to talk for 3 hours about bullshit. You know.
Right. We can't stay on for the whole 3 hours, so we'll end up getting back to it. But like, you wind up getting caught off on tangents to go like we started off with a couple of questions. Like I had specific questions, and then you get like the fucking Joker. Then you can go on for about the Joker for like 20 minutes, and then you only have an hour show. So how long are you gonna get into that?
Yeah, it's funny how quickly the time goes. You know, you can have a normal like chit chat or whatever for an hour, and it seems like you didn't really talk about anything. But that's why we've got unlimited future time.
Now, it's true. You can always go back to that show. Now, one of the things that we do have to contend with is that these are shows that people love to hear about when it's a famous person. When it's, a couple of weeks ago, we talked about our inspirations, which we barely unpacked that show too.
Yeah, we need to revisit that at some point too.
Yeah, we need to get back to that. But now, when it's somebody that does that for you, like Kevin Smith for Thaddeus, then you're tuned in right away. When it's us mooks, it's a little bit harder to get people to tune in, because who the fuck are we?
Freaking nobody.
Right. It's just another opinion like their own, and since they have an asshole too.
What you hope you capture is that you connect right with somebody.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, I feel that way too, or yeah, I like what that guy is saying, and some kind of interest, some kind of impact is made, and that person returns because they want to see what you have to say about something else.
Yeah. I mean, you don't get to be. I mean, like Joe Rogan, you mentioned how he can afford to sit there to talk for 3 hours.
Sure.
You don't get there unless you are engaging in people in that way. Now, Joe Rogan was also famous before he started doing podcasting already.
Sure. Yeah.
So that helps.
Yeah, guys like Kevin Smith, guys like Joe Rogan, fucking what's his name, Adam Carolla.
Right.
Like, Adam Carolla's good.
Into podcasting had a following already, right?
Yeah.
So they get to say to their following, "Hey, come check out my podcast. I'm going to be talking about some shit." And you kind of start with an audience. Whereas like us or whatever random Joe Schmo, you start.
Yeah, you got to build it from scratch.
Yeah.
Now, part of that though is that like you bring those guys up, and all of them, they all did stuff before they were podcasting, and that's why they were able to get to that level, because they were already doing things. So beyond the podcasting stuff, you also have to move in other directions and get other things going, right?
Sure.
Now, there's always what's beautiful. The beautiful thing about the world is there's always ways to merge the few. Okay, like Scotty and I, we're trying to put out more books. You get those books out, you get those books selling at the same time that you're creating books for the show. You get people that are interested in your books watching the show, vice versa, stuff like that. You hope to start building momentum like that, right?
Sure.
Now, last week we were talking about antagonists, And no matter what you storyline you're talking about, whether it's whether it's fictional, whether it's real life true crime, I'm into the true crime stuff a lot. Like the different stories about different mobsters and shit like that, different serial killers. Just it's fascinating what these fuckers, not only what these people do and what's going on in their head, but how the cops go about catching them too. It's amazing. But now every criminal organization, they all get these funds illegally. They all get caught because of the money trail. You got to make noise, Scotty. All right, hold on. Throw that up there. Throw it up there again.
Yeah, I found this bad boy.
Secrets to that looks pretty good.
The history of.
Yeah, because I want to get into that a little bit.
I mean, that organized crime gets brutal.
Yeah, pretty much. See, that's good. You got to read some of that so that you could start. We could do a show on specific things. Scotty's history of organized crime, so you could read these history books and throw out some shit to us. We'll bounce it around. But now they're mafia. That's just Al Capone is actually supposed to be the one who came up with the term laundering money, right? Because they all have to have a way to, you're getting all this cash in and you're getting it in illegal ways. You have to be able to explain where you got it from. So you have to launder that money, right? You have to turn it turn illegal funds into legal funds. So one of the things, all organized crimes, organizations have to do it. They have to, otherwise they get caught by the money, right? So I thought it would be pretty nice to build our own money laundering operation
for recreational purposes.
Right. I mean, like, how you would go about doing it, but there are a couple of rules that you have to do this.
Okay.
Because you had to thread a needle. Here. First, now you have to do it in terms of somebody who's starting off with nothing. What would you start off with? How would you start off with nothing, right? The other thing, though, is that you got to remember there's already organized crime units out there, organizations that are already powerful. They're already doing their thing. And you step on any toes, they're going to step that. You're going to end up like that picture.
Whether it's a territory or a proprietorship, right?
Right, exactly. So, right. I mean, now, they all use cash businesses, right? That's why strip clubs are so huge with the mafia, because you have so much cash going in and out.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, there's also the prostitution thing on the side. But there's so much money going in and out of the strip club between the booze and the dollars for the dancers and all that other stuff.
Sure.
Right. And they could deposit a lot of money and explain away why they're depositing a lot of that money.
Mm-hmm.
The thing is, though, is that now in Queens, it's generally the Russian mafia that's controlling those strip clubs now.
Mm-hmm.
In some of the other neighborhoods, you'll have a couple of gangs or whatever. Maybe Latin Kings are running one of them. Depending on the area you're in, stuff like that.
Yeah, like territorial stuff, sure.
Right, but the Russian mafia is not going to be too kind to you opening up a strip club, laundering money for another organization.
Sure,
anywhere near them.
Mm-hmm.
So you kind of have to thread that needle. It has to be something. It's okay to do that, but you already have to build yourself up to the point where you can defend your turf.
Mm-hmm.
So let's get into that a little bit. What do you guys? What do you think? You can. You think this is the way you want to go? You think you're prepared to do this? What are you prepared to do?
for entertainment purposes only.
All right. So there's 3 stages of money laundering, and this is something I've been trying to knock it around because I'm trying to get my head around the math of it. I guess like I'm somebody. If I'm doing it, then great. Like I don't know why they don't have a money laundering game. They probably do. They probably have an app.
Let's go fucking Monopoly.
Oh, jeez.
But all right. So the 3 stages. First stage is a placement. This is where you take the cash and you put it into a bank account. Okay. And this is where most people get caught because you have to like if you put more than $10,000 or more in a deposit, the bank has to call it in. They have to say, "Hey, this person's depositing this much money," and somebody's going to want to know where you got that money from.
Sure,
right?
Whether it's the IRS or other,
right? So you have to put the money in bank accounts. So it has to be less than 10,000. So you're looking like $6,000 each deposit,
Mhm.
right? So you had to put that into separate accounts though, because if you got to move a bunch of money and you can only do $5,000 deposits in a day,
Mhm.
then you got to be able to have multiple accounts to be able to do it, right?
Yeah.
So placement is the first thing. How do you get all this money into the bank without getting caught, without somebody raising up any red flags?
Mhm.
You gotta have
Then
somebody on the inside, right?
what happened?
You gotta have somebody on the inside, right?
No, but what you do have to do, like you have to be able to deposit money. Okay, for instance. All right. And again, I've actually got to get my sister actually was a detective, NYPD detective, and she worked on money laundering for a bit. So I got to get her to come on to see if this is correct.
That'd be a good
Right.
guess.
What happened?
That'd be a good
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think so. So okay, so like for instance, I was a bookkeeper, right? I used to do I used to do deposits. So I would now Scott, I actually know you from one of these jobs.
Right. Restaurant.
It's actually the restaurant. So I did the books for a restaurant, and the owner of the restaurant also owned the company that Scott worked for, which was an IT company, right? And so I would put deposits for both companies.
Mhm.
And I would put deposits into separate banks, into separate accounts, depending on what had to go where, what days,
Mhm.
right? So say you are a bookkeeper, right? And you have multiple people that you do the books for. I would absolutely go to a bank teller and deposit certain amounts into the bank for different companies, because I happen to work for. I can explain. I work for the full service bookkeeper. Okay, this is this has to go to this account. This check has to go into that account.
Mhm.
All that.
Well, that's where like front companies would come into play, right?
Well, that's one of the first things you have to do. And we're already off of a tangent because we're bounced around. Right.
That's how
All right.
it is, man.
Right. Okay. So like a front company, like
We don't have to talk about it now, but that's the natural progression, I guess. Then, right?
Right.
well, essentially because like if say for instance, right now, okay, first let's talk about how it would be legitimately done, right? If this was a real business and you weren't doing anything illegal, you weren't hiding any money, right? Absolutely. If I was working for somebody that would be that like a financial advisor, an accountant's office, depending on a consultant, depending on if they had power of attorney over certain things, depending on the type of consultant, I could go to the bank and I might have 10 businesses that are all the same bank, and I'm depositing money into each one of those accounts depending on what they have going on, right? Now, I might do that for every bank in the neighborhood. How many banks are in the neighborhood are there?
Right.
I mean,
sure. Chase, Citibank, TD Bank, Bank of America, that's just 4.
Right.
And
then there's like local bit.
And then there's the local banks that are all over the place, right? So say, for instance, you have 10 local banks, 10 different local banks, and you have 10 different business accounts. In the same day, I can go deposit money into 100 different accounts.
Mm-hmm.
And this is legitimate. This is if I was working in a field where I walked in with the business owner, they set it up where they knew that I was, that I had the access to these accounts, and just, and you don't even need that. You just, you go to a bank, they don't question you who you are when you're making deposits. You just have the deposit slip with the information filled out and handed to them, and they just put it in.
They only care when they have to take the money.
Right. Yeah.
Exactly. Right. When they want to give you.
That's fantastic.
Yeah. So, and now that's legitimate. Now, what's to say that every single one of those companies that I'm depositing the money into isn't a dummy corporation? Mm-hmm. Who's to say that they actually now? We talked earlier, and Scotty's reading Rich Dad Poor Dad.
I've done that.
Yeah. Okay. So, like, you see how, like, they specifically how in legitimate business, you buy a house, you open up a company, right? And you buy the house of the company, and because the company is in debt, right?
Right.
All the rent money goes into the goes to the company, but they're repaying the debt.
Right. And if anything
Right.
goes south, it's the companies that goes down.
Exactly. But at the same time, though, you don't pay any taxes because you're not making any income. All the income that you're getting is going back towards the original debt for the house.
Right. And then the other expenses. Oh, like we went and had dinner with a client. Write that off.
The electric bill, write that off. The phone bill, the cell phone bill, write that off. The company car, write that off.
Yep.
Right. The
And
house.
mileage and gas.
Yeah. Everything business expense.
The room in the house that you use as the office gets written off for rent.
Yeah.
You know? So like essentially all that, and because I mean, say for instance you spent $100,000 on a house, right? And I'm using that number for a reason to keep the math simple. Although there are places you go to college, there are places you can do that, right, and make actually really good money. But you throw $100,000 on the house, the company is $100,000 in debt.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you're only paying off, and so as long as you are still in debt for that, as long as you're still paying a mortgage, the company's still in debt. You're not paying taxes on that. You're not making an income.
Mm-hmm.
So, and that's how they do that legally. Now, if I owned 10 houses, I would have each one of those houses under a different company.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Right.
and that's,
You don't want one to be affected, one property to be the company to be affected in its entirety by one property that would take the rest down.
right.
You could take one company and put losses into another, but you don't want to drag it down.
Exactly. So now I might have an umbrella company. I might have John Lasota Inc. owns these 5 companies.
Right.
But that's still only responsible. Now, somebody's found John Lasota Inc. and sued that. I could lose my 5 companies that own the houses, but they would have to find an offense against that. And if that's as a consultant, what offense do I have?
I bet you there's some way of incorporating that, like they would be protected too. I guarantee it.
Probably. Now, this is all legal stuff.
Right.
This is all legal if you were legally doing this, right? So now, if I did the same exact thing, right? The same exact thing, only I said that I was charging double the rent that I was charging.
Mm-hmm.
And I was adding drug money into the bank account for that particular house, saying I was charging twice as much rent, right? Mm-hmm. Then I'm washing the money, because what happens is that now you're saying I was collecting that extra money because of rent money.
Yes,
and it's
legally obtained.
It's legally obtained. Now the thing with that is that eventually you're going to pay off that mortgage, and you're not going to but you're changing why you're doing it. At that point, you don't care about the taxes.
You sell it to one of your other companies.
Well, and essentially that's what you do. You sell it for a higher profit. You keep bouncing around the sale like that.
You become in debt, and you're doing the rent and yada yada.
Yep.
You could probably always take money against that house, put it back into debt, and use that money to then wash more money, right?
Yeah. Buy additional properties.
Yeah.
Well, essentially, what you would really do is that once it got to, because a $50,000 house is still only worth $50,000. You might be able to get it up to $60,000, but the property, because it's the area that also affects what the value of the home is.
Ah, man, you sell it to one of your crime family members, even though it's $100,000 house, but he bought it for $200,000, and now you're in $200,000 in debt.
You could continue to do that up to a point, within reason. Otherwise, before you do throw up red flags when you're spending $500,000 in an area where all the houses go for $50,000.
Yeah,
and they do it, and don't forget they do appraisals on that shit too.
Do the comps, yeah.
They'll if nothing else, they'll catch you on the taxes, because they'll do tax appraisal, and they say, wait a minute, this house is only worth this much. Why are you spending this? And then they'll throw up the flag. But what you do though is that once that house is paid off, then you buy the next house for twice as much. You spend $100,000 on it. Once it's close to paid off, you sell that house and roll that right into a $200,000 house, and then you can keep going and keep doing the same thing.
Right.
So that is actually a mix of a legal practice, and you're putting, and that's the whole thing with the money laundering. You're taking legal businesses, right, or legal entities, and fake entities too, and dummy corps. But you're putting real money you're putting drug money, which is dirty money, into real businesses, and you're just writing off in the book saying it's something else, saying it's sales or whatever the fuck it is.
Yeah. What was the one where it was? I can never recall it. One of the freaking Lethal Weapons or something.
Oh yeah, I think that's two, because that's the first one, Joe Pesci.
Yeah, and Pesci explained it. There was something about like taking out a loan or something. You're going to default on it, but then you've paid the guy or whatever.
Because it's another one of those things where, again, like if you have a company and I have a company, right? Yeah. And I take out a loan from you, so you give me a certain amount of money, right?
Right.
Now that could be dirty money, it could be whatever else it is, but I'm borrowing money from you from a
legitimate establishment.
Right, from a legitimate establishment. It could be all completely dirty money, but the minute it changes hands to me, now it's capital, right? Now I have a company, and now I'm starting to take in illegal money through my company, and I give it back to you as a return on your capital investment. So, like it's a lot harder for you to explain giving me $50,000 to start a business if that money's fake, right?
Yeah, they got to track where the other guy gets it, and
right. But that could be a house sale from one of your illegal things. But if that, even if however you got it, say that was legitimately that you gave me $50,000, right? Now I have $50,000 worth of capital in my thing, right? But I owe you $50,000. Now I could just take all the illegal money possible, right? All the dirty money, put it into my books through whatever my business is, right? Say I did it to open up a consulting business, and I needed that for the office and some salary or whatever, right?
Right.
And then, so then I have my consulting business, which is just me sitting there doing nothing all day, and I put a little bit of money into the books, into what I'm doing, and money back to you, return the capital. So you give me legitimate money, right, as a legitimate loan, and I'm paying you back with dirty money, but it's all your money.
Right.
I don't know how well we're doing this. I think it's really confusing.
Well,
I'm
Thaddeus has said anything in 20 minutes.
Well, you've been explaining stuff. That's the thing. You're bringing everything up to speed.
Yeah. And I lost you twice. I think my connection might be a little wonky tonight.
It could be a little bit slow.
Yeah, I didn't lose him.
All right. Thaddeus.
Yes.
So far, what have you picked up that we were putting down?
No, I and it's funny too, because just as I was about to say something, I was waiting for you to finish. That's when you froze again. I guess you lost out on me. I'm pretty much follow along all the way. Right? It's basically what the confusing part is I guess following the money and keeping track of it or whatever. The concept is relatively simple.
It's because first it is the idea of the first placement, and that's the hardest thing, getting the money into the bank with a legitimate way that you can not get detected and explain why the money's there. Mm-hmm. Then it's layering, which is moving the money around. I get the money for, again, like the loan example, I get the money into my bank account, right? So you have this business bank account, and you're putting the money into this business bank account, right? So the money is in the account of the business, but it's still cash deposits. Mm-hmm. The business then has to take that money and convert it into something else. So the business can then take that and buy a house, right?
Yep.
Go ahead and sell the house later on, get whatever profit it can, and then return it to you as the investor in the company, right? As legitimate, clean money from the sale of a house, even though you only bought that house a month ago,
right?
You bought that house a month ago. You sold it for like $2,000 extra.
It has now been laundered.
Yes. Because it wasn't the idea of the profit that you got from the sale. It was the fact the sale just says that, okay, the money that I already had is legitimately obtained through the sale of this house.
Right. Yep.
Well, how'd you get the money in the first place? Well, that doesn't matter.
Right.
I made $2,000.
That's the hard part about the laundering, is making sure that you can get it to a point where they can't trace it beyond. Like we were watching Ghost the other day, and I didn't realize it the first time I'd seen it, but the guy was trying to launder money, because I remember him looking at the thing. He's like, "There's something wrong here. I've got like 50 accounts, and they've each got like too much money in them." And when I was younger, I didn't know what the hell that meant. And he's on the phone like, "Oh, I promise, like, it's going to be taken care of." He was getting 80 grand. The money was going into those accounts. He was going to wash it out on the books, and then, basically even out the numbers, and then they were going to get their check or whatever it was. I don't remember the exact details, but that was sort of another one of those ways where if they looked at it, all it is a bunch of numbers that are balancing out on a sheet, and this guy got his payment, and it all seems like there's nothing to trace. Yeah, there's nothing to trace it to.
Right. Now, the whole thing is that you also have to open up businesses. That's why strip clubs, bars, restaurants are so good, because there's so much cash going in and out, and you're buying so much product. Like you were at a bar, right? And a lot of times you're paying these guys COD for a lot of the booze, and you're paying a lot of money for that booze.
Right.
So you give them money, fucking so you get a shipment, you pay COD, you go right back into the books, and whatever it is that you paid for, right? You say that you pay twice as much,
right?
Yeah. Because, and even then, they don't I did audits for New York State for a long time. They don't ask for, you can produce the receipts, right? But they don't ask for the receipts if the accountant gives them the books.
Right. The books suffice.
Right. The books suffice. The books take the price of the receipts. The receipts are only there so you can add up what your actual cost was. Right. Now, when you're doing it for tax purposes, you only get certain percentages of those things that you get to write off, and the rest of it you have to pay taxes on. For the launderer, they don't care about the taxes that they're going to have to pay on it. Not that they're getting it because they're showing that they have more expenses anyway. They actually don't mind paying the taxes, because that's the amount that they have to pay to make sure that's the VIG basically. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So I know you were talking about business.
Plus, launder money through the IRS now.
Scotty?
IRS? Oh yeah. I wasn't making that connection. What was the deal? What is the history? This is one of the things I haven't found out yet. What was the history that the pizza shops played in organized crime? Was that part of the laundering? But it's really consistent going back, I think, even to the 20s.
Well, that part of it is there's going to be a couple of things with the pizza shops. One is that it's a legitimate way to get people from back wherever the fuck they are to actually have a work visa to actually be able to stay in the country and bring more people, the family, in through just the same way that the Chinese restaurants do it now. You ever go through?
Yeah, and the Indian restaurant, same thing. You're right. Yeah,
right. So and I don't know if you ever had a neighborhood Chinese food restaurant, right? In the city, every 6 months it's a different new set of people that's in there.
Yeah.
And that's what it is. They're usually getting people work visas to come over, and then they're opening up legitimate businesses, and then saying, "Hey, look, see, they're a business owner. They could stay," and that's how they get people in. Yeah. Another thing is a pizzeria has a lot of people going in and out, right?
Right.
You have delivery people, all that other stuff. You have a lot of connections to people in the neighborhood. You see people that are in and out all the time.
Too. I was thinking, why wasn't an Italian restaurant? Well, pizza shop, you've got 10 ingredients.
Yeah, it's relatively cheap and easy to make a pizza. The initial setup costs a lot of money with the ovens and stuff like that.
Yeah. But they know a guy, right? Parts fall off of trucks all the time.
Exactly. Exactly right. And even so, and so you pay, but you got that cheap off the back of a truck, but your books say you paid a whole lot more money for it.
Yep.
And
so you paid for all that equipment.
Right.
What was that, Thaddeus?
I said, thus begins the laundering.
Yeah.
Exactly. So, you have what it is, and it's a cash business, right? That there's no way to say what is going in and out, money wise. So you can easily launder money, but it's also one of those places, one of those things that's like the hub of a community, People go in and out of there all the time. They're always talking to people. They stop in for a slice of pizza when they're with their friends.
Right.
You know, they say things that you aren't. They say things where you can get information from people because they have their guard down when they're in those moments.
Right.
Nobody's going to the pizzeria thinking I better watch my ass.
So it's like it
I'm
is
at a pizzeria.
a social hub. Like that is an information gathering place for the family.
Exactly. You're like, we talk about comic books a lot, right? Because that's what our influence is on a lot of this stuff. And for me, a big part of collecting, and it was going into your local store and talking to the store owner who you got to know, and the people that worked there that you got to know, and some of the customers that were in there the same day that you picked up your books because you went to go in the same day all the time. They be in the same. So you knew people at that particular place who were into the same things that you were into, and you got to bullshit about it. The same reason why what you hope to pick up on podcasts, you know. But you got that community feel, and you felt like you belonged to something, and that was your store. You know, like you said, a social hub.
Right.
You know,
I can imagine, man. You could just say, you could make up any number you wanted to say that we had to throw out X amount of food and write that off.
Well, that's again the food industry. Yeah, you know, between, and then you have like your electric bill, your gas bill, your those are all high bills.
Yeah.
You know, like you could easily use the fucking illegal money to pay that. And the legitimate money that comes from the business is your legitimate money. You know, so you're paying all the overhead with illegal money. So whatever the legitimate business makes is legitimate profit.
Plus,
I think I never thought about that. I always thought of like laundering was like they would do one thing. But it seems like there's just every day it's 100 different things.
Right. And the real skill is where you move it into 5 legitimate businesses. Because then you can't tell from one point to the other what was a legitimate sale and what was real money and what was illegal money moving through it. You know, the number they were given, there's something like $1.2 trillion a year that's laundered every year.
Man, it's a lot of detergent, dude.
Yeah. So, and it took a while to get into this, maybe 20 minutes, and we still haven't explained really money laundering clearly, but there are plenty of videos for that if people want to do that, right?
Sure.
But we're getting kind of towards the gist of where I was going with this, right? Okay. So like we mentioned, you mentioned the pizzerias, right? Pizzerias and why they use so much, because, but low overhead, you know, you could explain people that can't speak English working there. You can bring people over to indenture them to your cause.
Right, 20 dudes all on a paid salary.
Yeah, I mean, think about it. Like you want to have a hitman, right? You want to have a hitman. How do you explain somebody who doesn't really speak English and kind of looks like on the gruff and you know, lowly side? How do you explain them being in your company all the time?
Right. Oh, he's the dishwasher.
He's the dishwasher. Yeah, he's the cleaner.
Yeah, it's not intentional. Yeah,
yeah.
And I think too another aspect that the pizzeria adds too is the delivery boy or / boys, right? That you got, right? Any errands you need run, right?
Yeah,
they're doing it.
Oh yeah,
you need picked up, they're getting it. You know,
right? Here's a pizza box. Go put this in a pizza box and bring this over. No cop's going to stop you because you put 1 box of actual pizza and 1 box of cash. You take out, anybody stops, you take out, officer, you want this pie?
Sure.
Make sure you don't give them the one with the cash.
Give them the breadstick box with the cash.
Or maybe you do give them the one with the cash.
Shit. That's next level. That's next week.
Yeah, but I mean, organized crime had, you know, cops in their pockets all over.
Oh God, they have utilities in their pockets and shit. Like you normally get a gas bill $100, they're getting $5,000 charge, whatever, because that's the way to launder it. They're not paying the $5,000, but the bill says that,
and that's it. Only the bill has to say it.
Yeah,
that's it. As long as the bill says it, that's all that matters. Which is another thing. And that's another thing too, which with you know, getting into the construction companies and the fucking the hauling companies. Yeah, right. You know, you just produce random invoices.
Right. Because they don't have a product like the restaurant does, but
Sure.
it doesn't have a clear path of inventory cost.
Right.
Like waste management and all that crap. There's no product. You could say whatever the hell you wanted. Like a barber shop or whatever, all the same thing.
Oh, barbershops are barbershops are another cash business where you could put money into the thing. You know, see that? Okay. So now, wow, we're really going to have to do this again too, more clearly. I already see it because we've already been on half an hour. All right. All right. So,
Buckle down.
The idea here is you start out with nothing. We have to we have to go from having nothing to building up legitimate businesses, all with illegal money intertwined, right?
Mm.
But not, again, it has to thread the needle, not where it's stepping on any other industries, right? But it has to be like subverted, where people aren't knowing where it's going on. Things like and the person who's doing the money laundering, wants to take over neighborhoods with legitimate businesses filled with his people. So, like we talk about that neighborhood connection, a comic book shop, a hair salon, a barber shop, a pizzeria, the type of places that everyone in the neighborhood goes to, a bakery. They go to, they spend their cash money. They're in there every Sunday, every Wednesday, whatever it is, and they just talk.
Yeah. Corner store.
The bodega, absolutely.
Yeah, where you're getting like your newspaper, and although not necessarily anymore, but same thing. The periodical.
But let's break it down further. So now you say you have the building that has the corner store, right? The building that has the corner store, and somehow that building is owned by the launderer, right? The whole building is owned by the launderer, the corner store, and a couple of the apartments that are above it, right?
Mm.
But now you have the corner store guy, the bodega owner, doesn't pay rent. It shows that he pays rent, but he's not paying rent. Sure. Maybe he has the apartment just above that also, which he also doesn't pay rent on. Mm-hmm. Above that is another apartment that on the book show that somebody's paying rent, but they're not paying rent either. What do? They're a cleaning lady. Mm. And they go into their cleaning lady for a company that sends them into rich people's houses.
Right.
To clean. They got this nice apartment that they're paying all this money for on a cleaning lady's salary. Mm-hmm. How do they afford that?
Yeah.
Well, it doesn't really matter because they afford that by telling you secrets of the rich people.
Right.
So you're keeping tabs on other people.
Count numbers. Right. Pictures.
So now you think about how confusing that is, right? Just for one building, you'd have to figure out how all those numbers move.
Right.
Yeah.
Now imagine one building on every block throughout the entire neighborhood.
All seemingly not related. That's the key.
And that's the thing. All seemingly not related, but they are. But you can't trace any of that stuff back to the singular source that runs them all.
Right.
And that's always the trick, right? Is to not have that that trace, right? That one tie that binds or whatever.
Right.
Yeah, you got to be careful about the social ties. Then I think will become a big factor because you can't have like the cleaning lady's, sister in the next building down doing something else, and her mother somewhere else. Suddenly, you're starting to see all those types of, because the cops they keep track of associates, who's associated
right.
with whom.
Right. So no associates. The comic book shop owner and the pizzeria owner have to have nothing to do with each other.
Right.
In completely different social circles. Right. Like the people that associate with one group do not associate with the other group.
Right.
Huh. It's like a web. It's a giant web.
Sure.
Yeah. You don't want it to be a web. It's a web where there's no connections.
It's just a bunch of strings, man.
Yeah, just a bunch of strings.
But
string theory, right, man?
The task at hand here, which we haven't even begun because we don't even know how to even start the framework here, is we have to build the entire web and know exactly how the entire web works, and show exactly how it is not connected.
Right.
And make all the numbers work.
Right.
How do you do it? Volume.
How do you do it?
Well, that's part of it, though. Like, quite honestly, volume. I think that is one of the things. Like, information overload. That is a thing.
Yeah.
We've got.
Yeah.
Here's an example. It's sort of tangentially related to it. I found a site where you could look at the tax returns of charities so that you could really drill in to who is a legitimate charity.
And that's a good thing. Like I don't donate to the Red Cross because 90% of their money goes to administrative costs and none of it goes to the place where it's actually supposed to go to.
Right. And I looked at Cars for Kids, right? And let's say they brought in $6
I wish you didn't say that because as soon as you said that, that fucking song ran through my head.
Oh, God. Anyway, that's why I had to look them up. Let's say it was like $30 million was brought in, and $15 million was paid out. All right, they're at 50% being paid out. So I looked at the $15 million that was, it was administrative, it's overhead, it was different salaries for whatever reason. They had like 10 people that were on their books or whatever. Seemed a little sketchy. Then you look at where that $15 million went. It went to a single charity. And then I looked at the books of that charity. And lo and behold, $7.5 million went to administration. And then $7.5 million went to another charity. And then I looked up that one. It was the exact same thing. At the very end of it, there was a synagogue in New York City that got $600,000 or something like that. Out of all that
synagogue?
30 million, huh?
Who owned the synagogue?
Yeah, I mean, I only had some names and stuff. But yeah, exactly. Like
guy that started.
Probably the guy that was at the top thing. And I was like, holy shit. Out of $30 million of charitable donations, $600, quote unquote, 600,000 made it to like a place that could be considered maybe why a synagogue needs $600,000. I don't know. So my guess is that none of it went to anything.
Yep.
Well, 29 million and 400,000 were laundered.
Well, I mean, legitimately, like a lot of the money, some of that money went to the person who's actually moving the money, who's actually moving the accounts. The accountant is definitely profiting off of some of that. And
hell yeah. And he's, that's how some of the dirty money's coming clean. At each stage, you can make that transition.
And the thing is, for the accountant, they're doing it legally. They're not doing anything as if they don't know.
Not at all.
Brett, they're just working for a company. Now, that's one thing. All those people, right? Because you do have to have a face man. You have to have somebody at the synagogue who's fucking taking the money. That's you know what I mean? Yeah. That is they're in cahoots, but they're not.
Right.
Look a blind eye, so to speak.
Right. Wink, wink, nod, nod.
Right. But with plausible deniability.
Sure.
And plausible deniability is important.
And so that's what I meant. Like there was like level upon level upon level that imagine then multiplying that like in your neighborhood scenario. It would exponentially. There's so much, like literally there's so much of a web without any threads.
And that's pretty much what you had to build out, right? Where you're doing a couple of things too. The money that you are losing in that, because you have to have employees running these operations, right? The money that you're losing in that is going to pay your people.
Wait, that you're losing it what?
Okay, so like you said that that money went from this organization to this organization to this organization. Every time there's a transfer there, right? Sure. Every time, okay, so $15 million went to this organization. That organization that the $15 million went to, you have to lose a percentage of that for operating costs for that particular organization.
Right. There was like a quarter of it or 10% of it, depending on which one it was, went to like salaries.
Yeah.
In that, I got to get that amount of money. I have no idea. And then the other stuff, that was then the operational cost. That was probably how it got laundered out.
in the show Ozark, and you got to watch Ozark. I love the show Ozark. Great. Justin Bateman on Netflix, because he's a money launderer. This is, a lot of now they don't. He's good at explaining it, but not like the details are loose.
Well,
but they said something like that's what they said. I think it's 15%. They know that they're losing 15% of the money, and I think that's what it is. At every stage, you probably get a 15% hit, or so, But even if it's only a 5% hit, 5% on $15 million,
yeah,
a fucking money.
Better than paying taxes on it, though.
But that's the thing; it's better than paying taxes on it, right? And you can legitimately use it. And since you got it illegally anyway, what the fuck do you care?
Right.
None of the stuff that they any of the stuff that these organizations are doing are on the back of somebody else,
right? Because the original dirty money is coming from nothing.
Exactly.
They're spending like what a nickel for however much of cocaine or whatever, and that is literally printing money. Like the markup on that is tremendous because it's covering those expenses down the line. So they don't even care. God,
right.
Who was that Mexican? Whoever the big guy in Mexico, I think it was. He lost something like $15 million either a year or a month just to rodents.
That's fucking crazy.
Can you imagine that amount of money?
Right, but imagine where that's
money that you're lost to rodents.
like a reality is like I've worked retail. I've worked as a manager in retail, and loss prevention is the biggest thing in retail.
Right.
Because there are certain you have to bake into the cake. I'm going to lose this percentage of my goods on. It's one of the fears that I have, that I stop, that I don't do shit. Like a comic book business is real cheap to run. You can run an online comic book business for $500 a month, right? And the thing is with that $500 a month, it's not even $500 a month, because that's $500 a month wholesale, right? You get money back from that. So you're going to get like 25 to 30% back from that, depending on what you order. And including in that $500 is the product. So you still have like $350 or $400 worth of product of that. The other $100 for your website functions. So you're spending $500 a month, and $400 a month of that is product that you still have that you could ship for something, right?
Mm.
But you start selling this stuff, and returns is something that's legitimate, and you got to refund people's money.
Yeah,
and you got to eat the cost of that.
Yeah.
So as much as it could cost you more money if the product doesn't go through shipping wise, if it doesn't go through right, it could cost you more money in your returns and your refunds and your losses. People stealing packages that you got to deal with.
Mm-hmm.
That's a rough one. Somebody steals the package, you got to reimburse that money.
Right.
Except that, how do you reimburse it with your distributor? You're caught in between.
Yeah, because like when you're the middle guy, like you're the one, like the end guy who's the customer, they're not going to accept the loss, and the person who's the manufacturer, they're not going to accept the loss. You take all the risk as the retailer, the big markup. You sell a comic for a dollar, you're buying it for like 70 cents. How many do you have to sell to make up for any one loss, just to break even?
Exactly. And that's like now I also worked for a customs broker, right? There was a point that if you drank Celestial Seasonings tea, I brought it into the country.
You dirty boy.
Yeah, exactly. I actually quite like that stuff.
I drink that shit all the time.
But man. I worked for. Did you really?
Yeah.
There was a point. There was a point where if you were enjoying that, Scotty, you're welcome. Literally, like we brought in all the Celestial Seasonings tea.
Wow.
So we were the customs broker, and it is the reason why importers import and export, why they make so much money, is because it's just like is exactly that. Is because they are the middleman. The person they're buying it from, fuck you, pay me. The person that bought from them, fuck you, I want my money back.
Right.
And like there are so many times when customs will just decide to hold up your shipment, and because it's sitting in port, because they won't let it off the boat, it's costing you $10,000 a day.
Yeah. Like that. Like for anybody out there who doesn't know, I think it's something like there's like 20 or 30 of these like full on what do you call them, like container ship, the freight ships.
Yeah.
They contribute, they're so giant and burn so much fuel, they contribute more pollution than all the cars in the United States. Just those 20 or 30 ships. So
Well,
the amount of money that it takes to operate that thing is just unreal.
Oh, but like I'll tell you this. We used to charge $250 a shipment just to process the paperwork. Right. Each one of those containers, you know, you're talking about if you have a normal, like a 20-foot 20-foot container, right? That's a 10 by 20 truck. That's a normal, what you put on the rig and they drive off on a normal rig, right? It's not necessarily just one shipment on that rig. It could be one shipment. It could be 5 shipments on that, right? And so my boss was making over $1 million a year, charging $250 per shipment.
Just for paperwork.
And just for paperwork. And this is with a full office of like 8 people, full-time staff. And this, so his profits after that were like $1 million a year, 250. So that's, imagine how many fucking boats. Like I would bring in probably 20 shipments a day. Right.
Yeah.
So, but what is that? 20 shipments a day. That's, you know, fucking, what is that? That's $1,000 that's $5,000 a day.
Just for you.
Right. That's just my section of the paperwork was $5,000 a day. Sometimes I do 50 of them in a day.
That's when you start like just sending around empty containers.
It's crazy. So like how many containers come in and out?
Yeah.
That's a good thing. The import export, but that's another thing that you know. Oh man, import export. I wonder how that would work in the books. Because if you have a customs broker that's on your payroll, god damn, you could write off a lot of fucking shipments.
Like denied. Must be destroyed.
I guess you gotta weigh the right, because when you're dealing with that, the import export, you have a lot more fucking sanctions and eyes on you bullshit, right?
It's true, but you could like okay, you pay a certain amount of money to the exporter for a product, right? Mm-hmm. It gets eaten by rats. Mm-hmm. True. That's a big loss, right? Mm-hmm. I'm sure there's a way you could write that up in the books where that, you know, didn't happen, where the product got through.
Oh yeah, and then you get insurance payment on that, and suddenly the money's clean.
Yeah, I don't know. There's got to be ways to do it, but now we're again nowhere near even starting.
I thought we were like so.
We got to figure out the big picture and then trickle it down. How do we get there?
That's true.
Roadmap.
It was that was in the what do you call it? Rich Dad Poor Dad. Think about your destination, and then work your way back to how to get there.
In the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, that is begin with the end in mind. That is the it is what is geniuses. It? Is that the second? I think that's the third. I think that's the second. That's the second habit of highly effective people. It's be proactive, begin with the end in mind, and put first things first. So we're kind of beginning with the end in mind.
Don't forget to pay yourself.
Pay yourself first is Anthony Robbins.
Right. Well, that was in Rich Dad Poor Dad.
He does say that, yeah. He says that at the beginning too. The dad.
Oh, he says it throughout.
Yeah. That's a great book, man.
I liked it. There was many times where I was going through it and I'm like, well, I can't be doing that kind of stuff. But then by the end of it, he's saying, like, I'm not telling you what to do. I'm telling you that you can think of different shit to do. Mm-hmm. Right. That's how I did it.
Right.
Mileage may vary. There's ways to do stuff.
What's funny is the whole time that I was listening to it and hearing what he's talking about, I kept thinking about, well, you know, this is like legally laundering money.
Kind of.
It kind of is.
Thinking about it when we were talking about it, because so much of what he was doing, going out to lunch, a business expense. He went on vacation in Hawaii while he lived in Hawaii. He went on vacation somewhere. I don't remember what it was, but because he met with a client, the entire vacation was an expense. So he got to live on stuff that was written off from the company and therefore no taxes on it. Like,
Yep.
I think one of the things he was doing, like, it was some weird thing, but it was a legitimate thing where it was a promissory note or something. And basically it was for like $100,000, but he was getting a certain amount of money in. And he was even saying, like, I hope the guy never pays it off, because if he does, then I got taxes to deal with it and I lose my monthly income. But as long as he's just paying on this note, I'm getting an income, and like that money is tied up in something else. Didn't matter.
Yeah. Right. There's a thing that he mentions in there, which is something that was it Dean Graziosi, I think is what's his name is, talks about all the time. They're called about wholesaling houses, where you find a cash buyer, right? Yeah. Where you find a cash seller and you find a cash buyer. You find somebody who's selling their house for $90,000, and you find somebody else who's looking to buy cash houses to flip them, and you tell them, hey, I got this house for you for $95,000.
Mm-hmm.
And so you get the first one to sign a contract to sell the house to you for $90,000, that you'll get them the money within 6 weeks or some shit like that.
Right. You didn't have to have the money up front.
Right. And then you get the other person to buy the house for $95,000.
Right.
So you just have them sign the paperwork from the other person that they're going to pay this other person the $90,000. You get $5,000.
It was what do you say? 4 hours worth of work. He made $5,000.
Right, and you don't even care if he does pay the fucking bill.
Didn't risk,
because that's right. It's not your problem anymore. That's a contract between them now.
Yeah.
I got $5,000 for putting it together.
Right.
They do that all the time.
Yeah, the only thing you were on the hook for was in the beginning part, where it was like, I promised to pay you. You said an X amount of time, but if you didn't get the other guy, he could just cancel the deal. He said he always had something in there, like, subject to approval of my business partner. They don't have to know that my business partner was a dog.
Yeah, right. That's the exact line. Right.
Right. So he always gave himself an out. It's like perfect.
The thing that so keep this in mind, right? Because that is all legal stuff.
Right.
So the money launderer is doing all of that legal stuff.
Right.
At the same but they're using the illegal funds.
Right.
To back it up.
Right. They have all they got to do is have that extra layer of saying this original money, which is dirty, came from a legitimate source.
Right.
Otherwise, it's all this other same legal crap.
It's all the same legal crap, except, they get an extra couple hundred, they get $500 a month extra in the rent from this particular apartment.
Right.
But they own the apartment building, and the apartment building has 100 apartments. Right. So they're getting $500 extra from 100 apartments.
Right. There are these minuscule amounts that, taken as a single entity, don't mean anything. Nobody even cares about it. It's just multiplied over. That's why I said in the beginning, how do we do it? Volume.
Right. Yeah. So if you have an apartment building where it's 100 units in the apartment building, and you're getting an extra $500 a month for those extra apartment units, right? That's $50,000 a month, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's $600,000 a year from one building.
Right. Laundered.
On top of that, you legitimately own the fucking building.
Right. You put expenses in it. Wow, I know we're charging a little bit extra, man, but man, we just lose money every year.
Oh, with that many apartments, you got to get new boilers.
Right.
Look how nice it is. Look at all the facilities. Look at the security on this site.
That's right.
We have cleaning ladies come to your apartment.
That's right. Different one each week.
You have that one building. You have one cleaning lady in the building. She gets her free rent, and she goes around and she finds out the dirty secrets. Everybody fucking lives there.
Residual income.
That was like the video you shared a few weeks back. The guy, what did he hosted parties or whatever it was, right? Because he's not even tied to a physical entity.
Right.
He's just his own, independent contracting self. right? He buys all the alcohol,
Right.
sets up the venues, blah, 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 gets the talent, right? Then makes all the money off of the tickets. There's a cash bar, like just running nonstop all night long, whether it's alcohol or just water, even, you know?
Right.
So, and then, snacks and bullshit. And, so it's just fucking, it's small amounts, but just moving all night long.
Right. Because even that one thing, you've got 30 or 40 or 50 different opportunities. Like, yeah, we hosted this thing and bought all this alcohol. 10 cases got, lifted by the staff or whatever. This amount of food had to be thrown out.
Yep.
Whatever it is. It's every little spot. If you can carve out 10% from every little thing that you do and thousands of things in all day, 10% is still 10% over all the money. Even though it's only 10% on this $50 transaction, there's 1,000 of them or 1,000,000 of them. It's still 10% off of that.
But now here's another level to that, though, too. You are going to need a lot of people to operate that organization.
Well, sure.
Which means you're going to have a lot of close people that are operating it, but at the same time, you have to create silos.
Yeah,
they have to be where they don't connect to each other. So where you know these people, but they don't know that you know them. They don't know each other. They know they're fucking separated completely, so that they can't rat each other out. They can only rat out like Rico gets everybody, right? They can only get up to a certain level. And then it all breaks apart. We have to know how that would, we have to set up both with we have to, not only do you have to layer it with all the multiple businesses,
right,
but you have to layer it with all the multiple people.
Right. Yeah, the guy running the catering business, never even heard of the guy running the pizza shop.
Exactly. Scotty, see, this is the thing. We've been worried, Thaddeus. We've been worried about all these different storylines because we have a lot of good places we want to go to, but we've been worried about how exactly to get it all fitted together, and because there was so much that we wanted to do, right? Scotty, if we just focus on the money laundering part, on the building of the companies and the layering of the people in the companies, and then the hierarchies within the companies within the McMahon's organization, you could get the whole storyline from there, and everything else could pour out of there.
It really is, because it's sort of like, in order to do these different aspects, then that builds the other connections, and the reader will be privy to the fact that the caterer is related to the pizza guy. But in reality, we can just demonstrate they've got no social connections. The reader knows they're part of the same group, and he's in on something.
The tricky part is going to be keeping them within character and not crossing the streams, if you will.
Yeah,
sure. Right. It's like the viewer watching Goodfellas.
Yeah.
Right.
You're getting the narrative of one man's journey, but you're getting to know all these other parts and bullshit, and that's how the whole movie then ties together.
That's right.
So I was thinking about this from the very start, right? So at the very start, and I was thinking about it from the perspective of McMahon meeting the Mad Doser for the first time. Right? Him talking about it that's here or there, but where he starts with the organization, though, right, is he gets hooked up with the Dozer. The Dozer works at a record shop with a Ticketmaster fucking thing. So he starts getting the tickets early. He scalps tickets.
Right.
And he scalps, so he's scalping tickets and fucking making some extra money that way. But he's, and he's a young guy, but he kind of at a young age knows the stuff that we're just learning, right? So he thinks about how can he make more money with this, right? And he comes upon Pellegrino. And Pellegrino is making money at that age, working in fucking comic book shows. So, and Pellegrino turns him on to how cheap it is, right? To operate it. And that if you go on eBay, you could sell statues. This is the one advantage about running a comic shop online. You could sell the statues on eBay or Amazon or whatever it is, whatever marketplace you're on, but you could sell them on eBay 2 months before they actually come out.
Hmm.
So basically, you put it on there for 2 weeks at a sale price that's like, I don't know, 20% more than what your cost would be.
Hmm.
And you sell it before you even order it. If you don't sell it, you don't order it.
Yeah.
All right.
And so you're basically guaranteeing the plus 20% for whatever it is. You're guaranteeing you get your price before you even order it. It's already sold before you even put the order in. That's a legitimate way to make money, though.
Right.
All right. So that's, again, but that's starting small. That's starting where I'm real broke. You know, I don't have a lot of money to put into things. But that you could quickly get to 10 grand that you had to put it as a down payment on a house in a college town where the rent is $300 a month, but you're getting $1,000, where the mortgage is $300 a month, but you're getting $1,000 a month for the mortgage. Now, all of a sudden, this guy has $700 a month plus his scalping money, plus his statue money for doing like an hour's worth of work a week. Until, of course, huh?
And that's how you build something up.
Right. But we have to, that's again, that's a start, but that's a long slog to getting to places. In there, he develops a drug. In there, while he's doing that, he develops the drug. And then he starts making money with that. Right. Okay. It's kind of like an acid thing, and that we'll go over at another time. But we had to kick that around too. But it's essentially like an acid thing that does different shit to you, though, right? Now, because he has the connection with he's selling he's involved with the people that are selling comics, right?
Mm-hmm.
He gets the dozer to work a comic book show once a month. And people go to fucking pick up comics from the dozer, and inside their bags are the fucking sheets. And that's how he's distributing the fucking shit.
Wow, $10 for this comic? That cost now, I don't know, $50 for the comic.
Well, the thing is, but these are going to be the people that he's distributing it to are the ones that go out to other parties and they sell it for a shit ton of money. So but they're going to meet him at the show, and who's ever going to look there?
Nobody ever.
Nobody would ever. Like these comic book shows that are in the fucking church basement. So there's a comic book show at the church basement, right? There's a comic book show in the church basement, and the Mad Dozer is sliding fucking sheets of acid into these things, right? Into a comic book for specific customers that come by to give it to them. Huh?
Graphic novel, sir. That's why the price tag is so high.
That's right.
So, he gets and like, who would ever know? Then they go about their business. Nobody would ever think about that.
Right. And even if somebody found like a comic book with that stuff in there, it's just he's just hiding it in there. He wouldn't trace it to like the producer of it.
Right. Exactly.
Unless there was a bunch of them, but it would have to be statistically unattainable level of finding them.
Now, because that's a cash business, though, nobody can say how much money you made in cash on those tables there in those weeks.
Right. Yeah.
So you could put that in as legitimate business earnings.
That's interesting. Yeah. So, and then suddenly his world changes and he's now an organization.
Yeah. And you buy a couple more houses.
Yeah. And thus the money has been laundered.
Right.
I'm sorry. That was now a scene from Joe Pesci, man.
But that is only going to work for so long.
Yeah.
When the volume of sales goes up to where it's ridiculous money, then you can't be sitting there trying to sell it through fucking a couple $100 a week at a fucking comic book show.
Right. You can't be successful in your endeavors.
That's when you open the pizzeria.
Yeah.
Right. You have to move on to bigger and better things, but you have to be right. You want to open the pizzeria, but you also want to buy the building that the pizzeria is in.
Sure.
But have the person who's buying the pizzeria is a different company than the person who runs. You know what I mean?
Sure. Yeah. And that's where the layering and the I guess, right? That like the attention to detail really needs to be, right? Because somebody, right? One motherfucker or a group of motherfuckers, right? Has to know every string, right?
Right. Right.
Because you got to make sure that those strings aren't crossing, that they don't fucking fray, you know, you know, and then that's why, you know, right? And that's where the mob, you know, you got your one guy, right, the head of the family guy, right, the Tony from fucking Sopranos kind of thing, right, and then it trickles down to his lieutenants, right, and then from there each of them have their fucking 3-4 guys, and
Right.
each of them have 2-3 guys, and then that guy has a fucking guy, you know, and it's like and then it all trickles down, and all of those are salaries paid through either the pizzeria or the waste management or the whatever, you know.
Yeah. Now, although Scotty, you've read a lot of these things now. How is it? Is it that the guys get what they get, and then they give the boss a percentage? They kick up a percentage, or
Right.
is that they give the boss everything and he kicks down to them what he's going to give them?
No, it's always a kick up. You have the. It all goes from. I guess it's like MLM. It all goes from the bottom up. You basically, if you're just the one guy who's trying to do your thing, like hustling on the street corner or whatever, you're running your little neighborhood. Whatever money you get goes to the guy who runs that territory. A percentage of that. You don't. So even though they might have salaries for different things, that's probably just cooked off as being an expense. They're actually generating the revenue that worked its way up. So I might bring in $1,000 from my, pizza shop, laundering business or whatever the hell it is, or extortion. $700 is going to the territorial boss, and then he's paying 500 up, all the way up to the top.
Right. Okay. So then it's so that's why it's not like a Ponzi scheme, and that's why it works, because you get to keep what you kill. You get to eat what you kill.
Right.
You just got to give a little bit to the fucking the pack later.
Right. You're giving up a bunch more. It's sort of like the inverse. Like you're not keeping 70% and then giving them 30. It's the other way around. But you're making money that's coming from nothing.
Right. Right, exactly. Just because we allow you to operate in this territory.
That's right.
If
you don't produce, then you swim with the fishes.
So that's what I like. That's one of the big concepts of it's what it is. It's tithing.
Yeah, kind of.
It's tithing.
The mafia is the church.
Yeah, the mafia is exactly. Earners.
Church, the mafia.
The mafia has the idea of earners. Yeah, he's an earner.
Yeah. Yeah.
I like that. I actually like that. You're a subcontractor.
Mm-hmm. You fill out a 1099.
See, that's a good thing too, to think about it too, because you also have to think about things, and this is where it gets tough, the layers of the people involved. What is the motive? Okay, so the McMahon isn't going to run that comic book business forever. That's what got him started, right?
Right.
But he's going to hand that off to one of the early investors. Okay, so early he has Pellegrino and himself, and he's got to get 2 other people to fucking to be in on it, right? Pellegrino, obviously, the storylines take him other places, so he has to have one of those early investors is the guy that takes over the comic book shop. He's the guy who's running that, right?
Mm.
So he's a subcontractor. Here's a guy who loves comics. He wants to make a living on comics, right?
Yeah.
How does he get involved? What is the structure of how he's involved with that? So he takes over this comic book shop, right? And what is the progression of how he's involved in the organization and his level of it? We got to consider that. Who is this guy? What's his level of
So the guy taking over presumably really wants this job, right? This is his dream job.
I mean, he's one of the early investors. He's one of the 4 friends that started this company, of this comic book company that they all had together as kids.
Okay.
And now he's made it his livelihood.
Okay. Well, he gets to make his own salary. He gets to make his own decisions. He's just got to kick up money. right?
He gets free rent.
Sure, free rent, free inventory, whatever. Fucking here.
And protection.
Sure.
Of course, he wouldn't have needed that if
right, but in theory, right, the next guy, right, he's moving on to
You would still
bigger
need that guy.
things. So he's got an entire inventory of the shop as is, right? This guy now gets to take over and make his own decisions, buy his own product, feature what he wants, blah 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 blah, right? He gets to make his own salary, right? It's a bump in salary of this and that. You get to give yourself X amount of whatever. All you need to make sure is A, B, and C. Money kicks up. You handle this, that, and the other, right? Everything else, he basically gets a fucking free company.
See, in the case of the launderer, see, that's the mob is making money through extortion, right? So the mob is making their money, especially like in the early days where they wouldn't fuck with drugs, right? Because drugs, like Scotty was saying before, drugs is printing money. You make your own money with drugs, right? But with the mafia, where they weren't dealing with that
for a long time,
right? Like, how else would you make money but robbing it from other people?
Right. Yeah, I think the other thing you have to look at is, like, he's not just taking over this comic book shop. It's more than the laundering, just because I think, like what you said earlier about, well, we're going to use your comics to ship drugs. So you're in bed with the family. So when they need you to do something, it's like, whatever it is, you need to set fire to half of your inventory.
Well, here's the thing about that. He doesn't know that that's the case.
No, not in the beginning.
He doesn't have to know that the dozer are slipping things into people's stuff. He doesn't ever know that he doesn't even have to know that that's going on.
True, that comes into the different deniability layers. Yeah,
right, exactly. He doesn't even know that's happening. That's just something the dozer's doing because he's the fucking mad dozer. Yeah, he's a fucking coach.
Saying, "Hey, we've got this comic book shop. You can slip them in there. Doesn't matter if the guy finds out he's one of us, but the guy who's doing it, you're right, wouldn't even know."
Right.
No.
So, but now, if the idea is now the mafia is one thing, but now if you're a drug kingpin who is laundering money through a place, right? And you offered this friend of yours, okay, I'll take care of the rent. I'll take care of the rent. I'll take care of the inventory. I'll even give the apartment upstairs free rent. I'll take care of the expenses. You just got to put, this money into your accounts and then send it out when I need you to send it out.
Right.
That's all you got to do.
Right. You can do all that, but we handle your books.
Right. Right. You could do all that. But exactly.
Well, I mean, for most of the laundering, right? Most of the owners of those type of companies are just figureheads. There's somebody that's basically, you're saying to them, you really don't need to do much. You get to collect a salary. Like, who's saying no to that?
You get free rent. It's your business. Order what you want. Right. Oh, it's even better. See, that's the thing. And this is one thing, again, I have the experience because I worked in one of these offices. But if you have somebody who's an accountant, right, and they are offering full charge bookkeeping for the neighborhood companies, we're going to offer you all of this. Just go to this CPA here and do all your books through them. Let them do your books, right? But it's not the CPA. The CPA doesn't know either.
Right. No, not at all.
The CPA is getting money from them. Because why? Because who is the schlep that works for the CPA that's doing the data entry for these companies? But the guy who actually owns the shit. Mm-hmm. He's posing that that's his part-time job doing the books for these companies around. It's actually him, and he's moving the money around.
Yeah, because then he gets to keep an eye on everything.
Then he could see all right, and nobody knows because he's just the schlep they fucking give the checkbook to, and he enters it into the system.
Yeah, the building owner uses that CPA. And the thing is, though, is like, it's not just the one CPA. There's 20 of them, even though it's all the same guy.
Yep.
this is the part where they pull the mask and it's like, old man Harley.
That's right.
He's been cooking the books all along.
But the whole thing is predicated on that. Every time you pull off the mask, it's old man Harley, but then you have to pull old man Harley's mask off, and it's somebody else.
Oh yeah, fuck that. It's not him.
It's the many-faced god.
Old man Harley doesn't know how to do numbers.
That's
Not a
right.
CPA. He's not even certified.
He
Get to the third grade.
Did we just say the same thing at the same time?
Horrible. Holy shit! So like, I don't know. It's 11:53, and I have no idea where we are.
Nah.
I think
Character depth.
we put a lot of ideas out there. I think we got to the point where you could start off at small potatoes, and make some money to start up some legitimate businesses.
Just a couple of steps to get there too.
Yeah, and I think it's a good legitimate thing to him to start at scalping tickets when he's 16.
Yeah, because that sounds like a young guy's shtick out there.
Scalping tickets and selling comic books because that's what you're into.
Right.
Making some side cash, and then by the time you're 18 years old, the guy who owns the shop, right, who ends up owning the shop is the friend of theirs. He's 16. That's their 18-year-old friend who's actually old enough to legally open up a company to be able to get the products.
Yeah.
So he's the one who ends up taking it. But then at 18, in the 2 years that he becomes 18 and he's able to legally open companies, then he starts buying rental properties at 18 years old.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And then he comes up with the drugs so that by 20 years old, he's already jumped from that early stuff. At 20 years old, he's got a bunch of properties that he's already doing other things.
So now let me ask you, what's his, it's cliche to say this, but what's his motivation? Like, what is there something pressing him to make this money faster, let's say, than just slogging it out in the fucking comic book store? Like, why turn to the drugs and the this and the that,
Well, the drug thing is something that we're going to, it's actually not a bad drug. Well, I'm going to explain all that at a different time.
Okay, yeah.
I actually want to bounce it back and forth with Scotty a little bit to hammer it out.
I don't want you guys giving away too many spoilers either.
I don't care because as we're developing it, and then you write it and you realize something doesn't work, so that what it comes out in the writing is completely different than what we talk about here.
Mm-hmm.
And none of this makes sense anyway. We bounced around so many different places.
Yeah.
See, like I even forgot what I was saying.
Well,
what's his motivation to make the money quicker to turn to some of these?
He realizes it's
various modes.
Oh, sorry. He realizes it's so easy. Like, to him, he looks at it and it's like this path is, at least my impression of it, this path is laid out in front of him, and he looks at an end game and then realizes how easy it is to get to that end game from where he's at. Doing properties, doing the comic thing, doing the rentals, and then the drug, etc. They're all stepping stones to his end goal, and he sees it as being very easy to obtain.
It's a lot of it. It's part of it is the Mount Everest thing. Why did you climb Mount Everest? Because it was there.
Right.
Part of it's that. You're right, because it's so easy. He did it because he could.
Right. Yeah. That's a better way of putting it. Not that it's easy. It's just, he can.
Right. But now there's also with him in particular, right? I draw a lot of this from my own personal shit, but also from a lot of guys that I knew growing up. Right. Where I grew up was right on the border of Brooklyn and Queens.
Mm.
Right. So on one side it was mafia run, on the other side it was like fucking it was like gangs and shit. East New York, like fucked up gangs. Right. And so you bought your weed and your fucking shit like that in Brooklyn, and fucking on the other side was the mobsters, where I would go hang out in the bars when I was a kid, when I was like fucking 14.
Mm.
And I would drink all night with mafioso guys that you might not see them again after that.
Mm.
You know what I mean? So it was a weird place growing up, right? But there's a certain amount of protection. There's a certain of innocence growing up in those neighborhoods because of the way that they protected the neighborhood.
Sure.
And a lot of it was about protecting the neighborhood. A lot of it was about protecting your people and taking care of your people, right?
Mm. And your territory.
Right. But then what if you're a kid that's kind of in between? You're in between now. The mafia, the mafioso types. All the mob movies have the Italians hate the black people, right? And when you think about how, if you think about gang mentality against mafia mentality, it would make sense that they would clash too, because the mafia is about organization and business. They don't want people running around and fucking causing havoc with fucking things that aren't organized.
Yeah.
It's a lot like the fucking Batman and Joker dichotomy. So that would make sense. But what if you're the guy in between? What if you kind of come from both communities?
You float between, yeah.
What if you're friends on both sides of the aisle? What if you want to protect both neighborhoods? What if you have seen the demise of the mafia and how it's changed your neighborhood for the worst? What if you've seen the corruption in government and realize the only way to fucking beat that corruption is to form your own corrupt government? Or to go the exact opposite and go to the underbelly and fucking disregard their laws, but find ways to get around it. You know what I mean?
Sure. Okay.
So essentially, like this guy, part of it is that he's smarter than everybody else. He's just better at things than everybody else, but not in a cocky way. He just kind of Ferris Bueller kind of way. He just does it because, that's what he does. It's who I am. I can do it. I will. But part of it is because the wanting for the money is because he needs to control. The only true control you have, or he feels that he has, is to build an organization to run things the way he grew up with things running, the way the old school ways, were run. But in a way that helps people instead of just fucking, like knuckle breaking and throwing them back of a trunk and throwing them fucking cinder blocks in the river kind of shit. Now he'll do that.
I was gonna say there's a place for that still.
Right. He'll do that, but he does it to keep the peace.
Right.
He does it to make an example. He does it so, look, don't fuck with me again. I'm just and I'm nice.
He's not afraid to put on the Captain Smack-a-Hoe cape.
Right.
Needs to.
Captain Smack-a-Hoe will make an appearance if he has to. He will smack that hoe.
Right. And unlike some other things where you think of, because some people say, oh, that's like, that's a trope where he's like just trying to do good, or he's really a good at heart and whatever. The thing is, though, is like there's no tolerance for not following the rules, because it's all predicated that you're outside of like the social norms and whatever the quote unquote laws of the land are. And therefore it's a zero tolerance for when you don't follow that establishment's rules. So if you do something that from the outside, he's going to look like a ruthless mob boss type, but he could be that really good for the neighborhood, trustworthy, just guy, provided you don't ever step out of that line. Sure. Then you can't be trusted.
Right. I mean, Anakin Skywalker just wanted to bring peace to the galaxy.
But now, as opposed to that, though, he doesn't actually. He toes the line, but he never actually falls over into that dark side, though.
Right,
he does
like paranoid and dishing out punishments. What do you call it? Proactive, like preemptively.
Yeah, he's very calm, cool, and collected when he goes about all this. So much, though, that, again, unlike the mafia where everybody knows who the boss is, nobody actually knows who the boss of this organization is.
Right.
Very, very few people know that it's actually him.
And that's the survival, right?
And that's another thing that we have to establish, too. What is that chain of command? Who are the very few handful of people that know that it's him, right? And how do they communicate with the rest of everyone else to keep it that way?
Right. Well, that's when you have, that's when you start setting up things where you've got these different leaderships in these different territories, and then there's these rivals and whatnot, and it seems like they're in charge to everybody else.
The puppet master.
Right. Even though there's that one invisible guy in charge, it looks like it's these, these 5 crime families. and they're all trying to work together, and they're each headed up by like one guy. When in reality, there's somebody that's even in charge of them, but they play their role.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. We got to work all that out. Man, you see how this whole web
very interesting concept too, and I like it from the standpoint too of, right, it's not derivative. It's not just the Howard Hughes, like just trying to like push the envelope just for the sake of doing it, right? It's also not Tony Montana that wants to fucking just fucking get coked up and shoot everybody, right? It's this sort of altruistic but not anti-hero Batman of the story either, right?
Although he is an anti-hero though.
Yeah, sure. But like Batman, right? It is most looked at as like the hero. But through and through, he's a hero. He just is willing to do certain things that Superman, truth, justice, and the American way wasn't willing to do.
Right. Yeah, it's a good distinction.
Yeah.
But through and through that he was a hero. He
now,
was doing what was right.
This is going to be more like 30s Batman, where he will pull your teeth out with a fucking plier before he kills you.
See, I don't know 30s Batman.
Yeah, well,
before his no killing rule, right?
Yeah, right. There was a point where there was not a no killing rule. Yeah, that's where he might drop a guy off a building.
Yeah, and that was when Batman was dealing with legit dealing with mobsters and stuff too. Right.
Yeah, that's before all the crazy fucking escalation.
Yeah, it was like Dick Tracy but Batman.
Right. See, the thing is with that is that our whole concept right now, as we hammer down, and I think this is right, I think that it hinges on, because the antagonist, even though he's an anti-hero, I guess I don't know, it's weird how that works out. But it does, his operation is the linchpin to how everything else goes, right?
Mm-hmm.
But Thaddeus, it's also at the same time hierarchy, and how everything is a hierarchy, and how all of our actions are dictated by where we are on that hierarchy and where we wish to go on that hierarchy.
Right.
Is a key concept that we're working with. That okay, so your job, you have your boss, you have you have the owner, you have the person that is just under them, maybe you have a manager under them, and then you.
Mm-hmm.
Right? But that's a hierarchy.
Sure.
Where do you fit on that? And every situation has that, no matter what it is. Your group of friends, you have the cool friends, you have the husband and wife who are the cool husband and wife.
Mm.
Right.
And then everybody else that fits in their place down the line. It's no different, like a pack, just like a fucking pack animals. It's the same.
Sure.
You can be in lots of different positions. You might be like the mail clerk at your office, but every Saturday night you run the local Moose Lodge and you're the head honcho there and have all the power.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Exactly. And everybody loves you. Everybody knows your name. They all want to be your friend. Exactly. It's literally exactly like that. And that's what life is. It's life is that. So we kind of want to show that also. Right.
I like the intellectual spin, because fucking Tony Montana, again, going back to the Scarface sort of reference, right? Because that was the ultimate of the don't give a fuck, just get into power, get more power, blah, 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 right? The intellectual aspect of it, where this guy doesn't want to be the boisterous, in your face, hey, I'm the guy, right? He's more about setting up the structure and running it without being seen and heard so much for it.
Right. Opposite of Capone.
Mm-hmm.
He's essentially Wilson Fisk, right? The Kingpin from Daredevil and Spider-Man. He's essentially that, right?
I was thinking about Kingpin before.
Only he's a good guy.
Yes. Yeah, that's yeah.
Right. He's basically a good guy version of Wilson Fisk.
Mm-hmm.
Is essentially what it is. But that now another thing that we have, right? Okay, so this is just the reality. You are wherever you are in your on your hierarchy, right? And the way that your personality is, the way that you act, right, dictates where you are across all the hierarchies, across the 5 or 10 different hierarchies that you find yourself in. Where you place on each one of those is dictated by how your personality is. Some character traits you have will get you higher on some of those hierarchies and lower on the others, whatever it is. But when you're stressed out, you're going to act differently. And that's going to cause you to rise or fall in each hierarchy a different way, depending on what their reaction is. When you're sad, you're going to act a different way. That's going to cause you to rise and fall, right? So it's not just the hierarchy that we're in and what the rules in place are in that hierarchy that allow us to go up and down in it, right? And how our talents allow us to go up and down in it, but also our emotional state and how that changes how we access those talents to move up and down the hierarchy, right?
Okay, that's a new aspect because I knew that, like, okay, so work has their own rules that you need to follow, and the lodge has its own rules. Some things that are acceptable in one are not acceptable in the other. But the emotional part, I don't think we had talked about before. That's a really interesting aspect.
Well, we did, remember. Okay, so now you have the human incarnate of anger. You have the human emotions, and these are like supernatural beings. So you have anger, and when anger's around, people get angry, right? So because you have, and the thing is, it's specifically the anger in people that makes the incarnate of anger stronger or weaker, right? So the angrier people are in society, the stronger that particular entity is going to be at the time, and then he can influence people. They're all influencers. Anger, depression, fucking despair, love. They're all like supernatural beings that influence people to feel certain ways, right? And they have their agenda. They have their hierarchy, and they have their agenda that they're trying to run too. So if, like, the incarnate of despair, right, obviously she wants strength, so she wants more people to feel sad, right? So she might influence somebody to, I don't know, blow their boss in front of everybody. Right? Now, in the porn industry, that might get you up higher. Wow, she get that blowjob. Look at that. That put her up higher, right? But on the church board, that's going to get you kicked off the church board. And that's going to get you spiraling out of control. Some people, it might liberate them, and they go into the porn industry.
Right. It depends on how you hold to the different groups, what you feel about them. How much does the church board may not have mattered to this person.
Right.
So it really have an effect. It could have been that being on the church floor was their life's goal, which means it's a devastating effect.
It could be that the incarnate of fate and the incarnate of love got together and said, okay, this person, if they go nuts, they're going to take out that person, and we need that person. So guess what? Fate is going to turn them into a love of porn, and now they're going to love dick and get as much as possible. There's a lot of ways we could go with that. It's the natural,
hits your lips.
It's the natural inner nature of a person and how they react under certain emotions in a certain particular situation, depending on where they are. And or is it outside forces fighting over them, where they're conflicted because they're pulled in different ways because of these outside natural forces.
Right.
So you see that, and also then there's werewolves and vampires and all that shit too. So you see, it
just keeps getting better.
It's big.
Yeah,
it's a lot.
Yeah, because the government is no different than the mafia. They just have a different set of rules.
Right, and we have that side of it too. The whole conspiracy side where the fucking, because it's true, it's not a conspiracy if it's true. Where the government is exactly the same as the mafia, only they make it legal.
Right. So when you look at it, like you look at them and they have all this stuff and all this bureaucracy and nobody's accountable to anything, and yet somehow these guys are all magically filthy wealthy.
So Charles McMahon has, part of his thing is that he sees that they're accountable for nothing and that they could just crush anybody. So the only way that you're not going to be able to crush anyone is if you fucking have the entire neighborhood set up where you run the neighborhood and nobody knows it. And you're the law there, and you can do whatever you want there, and there's not anybody's going to say anything about you. So you can run your operation how you want. Witnesses? What witnesses? Nobody heard nothing.
And the only, I guess, there'll be some characters that know a certain amount, but the only one person that's going to know the detail of everything that this guy does is the reader.
Yeah.
Right. That's why we're saying, like, you don't know all these bits. They don't know all these bits are tied together. The reader does, and that's what he's like, sort of the fly on the wall and in on the secret, and hopefully that's what makes it exciting.
Yeah,
right. But it's a lot to do, and it's a lot you have, and to do it right, you have to organize it first before you start writing it. You have to know where you're going.
Oh, sure.
A lot of it. You could write yourself into so many corners.
Right, that's the scariest part, because whatever you commit to in something that gets published, that's canon.
Yeah. Now, we already have a fix for that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Our last book, The Beer Whisperer, we have a character that he has a friend that's an alien. He has use of alien technology, and alien technology is great because you can just say alien technology, and you don't have to explain anything.
Right. Like, there's no technical details to worry about, no quantum to express.
The truth is, if you could understand the technical details of alien technology, you would have already had it. It would have been human technology.
Right.
But you didn't. You didn't understand shit, and you can't explain it to anyone because they don't understand it either, because they would have it too.
Right.
So you know what? Go fuck yourself.
Right. To you, it's like the electricity. You hit the button, it goes on. What the fuck do you care? Yeah, aliens.
Right.
I don't know, but it's cool. Can you give you cancer? I don't know, but it's cool.
Gives me a tingly feeling in my balls. I think it's all right.
But we have this character, there's another one where he has a portal. And I told you about the portal, the sleep portal. We went over to the sleep portal.
Yes.
So he learns that the sleep portal is actually going into the source of all things, like heaven, if you will, going into God, if you will. He goes back into behind whatever all this is, right? And from there, he can make things happen however he manifests it, right? But from there, he could change reality in the real world because he's learned how to do that. He's learned how to be strong enough to be able to do that. But because you're in the stream of the source of all things, and in quantum physics, there's no such thing as time. There's no concept. Everything happened all at once. Everything that's already happened, everything that ever happened already happened. But everything that's happened just happened.
It's like the second time. I meant to tell you this. I'm sorry. This is go way off on a tangent, but I'm going to forget otherwise, and I've been waiting to tell you this for a couple of weeks. I heard something about that with, because I was reading A Brief History of Time, and it talked about that. Like in the quantum physics world, time is just a part of the fabric, right? We only perceive it from our relativity. From the point of view of the photon, it can travel 14 billion years across the galaxy and hit your eye, and as far as it's concerned, it's instantaneous. Time has passed. And I remember when I was like getting high with my brother and a friend when I was a teenager, and we were talking about this kind of shit, and we were looking at it, was like, yeah, imagine time just like being on the surface of like this sphere, and like you're not going forward and backwards, you're just moving to a different spot, right? And then that's what I said, because is, was, and will be all at the same time. And that sort of kept popping up, and I think it was sort of in that book, and it's basically what we were just saying now.
Yeah. What?
It was just wild because it was something that popped into my head like 20 years ago, and and then I heard it in a book, and then John just said it.
It just means that you're on the right path, Scotty. It's like deja vu. Whenever I get deja vu constantly. Whenever I get deja vu, it means I've been there before.
Yeah.
It means that something's happening the way it's supposed to be happening. Otherwise, I wouldn't have been there before.
Yeah.
Of course, it could be that Alan Arthur's going back and fucking with the timeline.
Right.
But essentially, that is that we have an ability to go back in time and change reality. So you can basically change the timelines when they get completely fucked up. Okay. So that if we write ourselves into a corner, we'll just have something where somebody goes back in time and changes reality. So it's all, you know,
the only thing we
lines up the way.
The only thing we have to do is like make sure that that's not OP. We need to make sure that there's some restriction somehow. Otherwise, the entire thing should have just been perfect, because you can always just go and change it. There's got to be some cost.
Yeah, well, we'll have to figure all that out. That's going to also come out in the thinking of the laundering schemes.
Right.
Yeah, like his dick's got to get smaller every time he uses the machine or something.
Well, with that, actually, one of the things one of the things I had with that was in the last book, right, with him, he has to constantly have his daughter come into the portal to visit him there, right, because he can't leave the portal. And, you know, this is later on when he like, if you're just a normal person using the portal, you wouldn't be able to do that. He can only do it because he's in there, right? But if he doesn't have regular contact with people in reality, he'll slip off into the stream and basically fucking disappear into nothing.
Okay. His consciousness or whatever.
Right, exactly. So like, it's like if you like, it's easy to explain to anybody that's ever tripped acid. It's hard to explain to anyone that hasn't tripped acid. But there's
I never haven't. I get where you're going from it, but I'm also a big like sci-fi geek and shit. You know, fucking Star. Yeah. I grew up on Star Wars and Star Trek and shit. You know, like that's right in the wheelhouse.
Star Trek, if you think about the Star Trek Generations with Picard and Kirk, right? Do you remember that one where they were in the Nexus? And they were like, he was living in happy memories, and they didn't even know that the other outside worlds existed.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
It would essentially be something like that, you know, like if things got fucked up, you know, like that cost, like if you keep going back and changing things, you forget what's actually real and what's not yourself anymore, right? And then you lose connection with the people that even have you connected to that real world to begin with.
Yeah.
And you just go off.
Right. You lose that tangible connection to whatever it is that, you know, your concept of reality, right?
Right.
If your concept of reality is anything, it's nothing, right?
No, you get lost in time, because when you're currently in time, you know what has happened and you don't know what will be happening. But if you start mucking too much, you literally will have no sense of reality.
Yeah.
Right. You'd be completely confused with what future was supposed to have been, right, and what past was supposed to have been. You have done it so much that you yourself are confused if you went back and changed that one or not, if that was the real one or if it wasn't.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah, I like it. Yeah, because it's absolute loss of self if you're not careful.
Yeah. Then, and the thing is that you could absolutely, like, say for instance, in the book, Alan Arthur has his daughter go in and visit him in the portal, right? And that's what grounds him so that he can keep coming back to reality to help her, right? But say he goes back in time and changes something so that she's not born.
Mm.
He changes something so that he doesn't even get to go into the portal.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah,
that's always the biggest issue and concern with the whole time travel concept, right?
You know, once he does something where he goes in and he changes it so that he can't go back into the portal, right? Then that's a time loop that loops into time. That everything will happen every single time, and then the future is whatever it is, and he's just lost.
Right. We got to have a guy like that, like somehow reference like a such and such who did whatever and then got lost in time, and then like one of the stories, there's just like some homeless guy wandering the street, and you're like, you look familiar, like, don't I know? What's your name? And then he said his name, and it's that guy, like oblivious to reality.
Well, that's that one character. Eventually, is not going to be the only one that goes back and forth like that, though. He's just the only one I have at the moment. So we'll have other characters that have that use the portal.
Sure.
And there will definitely be, you could definitely use a lot of that shit.
You can just have him mumbling something prophetic in every fucking scenario of reality.
Yeah. And that's actually good because some of the stuff that he says will be spot on, dead accurate. Some of the stuff he says will be batshit fucking crazy. Mm-hmm. So it'd be like, yeah, this guy's fucking crazy. Here, listen to the things he says, but then he predicts like 6 things. So then people record that oh my God, the bum in the street, the prophet bum, you know, because he got 6. And it's actually a crazy guy who's been bouncing back and forth in time.
Yeah.
So he is crazy, but he's also a prophet, and he doesn't know which reality he's thinking of.
No.
That's good shit. Anyway, all right. So we got nowhere on that thing, but it's 12:24.
It's to be expected. We predicted that was going to occur.
Yeah. It seems to be the way we do things. It's our ethos.
We're gonna give you guys like 20 episodes of part 1s,
right?
And we're gonna go back, and there's gonna be like 15 episodes of part 2s.
Right.
Something's gonna fall off, right? We're gonna forget to do something,
right?
And then by the end of it, we'll have like 5 complete, coherent fucking topics that make it episode 5.
Maybe
it's funny
after editing.
But this has been interesting.
Yeah.
I do enjoy this sort of live brainstorming kind of session here. Not that this should be what our show is, but too the I do like the topic idea, right? It gives us kind of a focal point, even though we still go off on our own tangents or whatever. But it's an interesting focal point, and especially like the antagonists and you know, who's your favorite this or what's your favorite that. Those are generally topics that everybody can kind of relate to on some level, right?
Yeah. I think next week I want to do your favorite type of story. You know, we all have, you know, like there's the formulaic stories, right? And there's all different kinds of formulaic stories, right? But then there are stories that are formulaic that use the same formula, like different stories that you like these stories, but they are the same type of formula, like rom-coms or something like that would have the same type of formula, you know?
Yeah, sure.
So yeah, that's a good one for next week, is to do like the different type of stories, like if you were writing, if you were making a movie, what kind of movie would you want to make? Because everything's derivative, right?
Right.
So like what kind of like what is like the last man standing story? You know, where okay, everybody has this fort and they all have to battle, and they have insurmountable odds, and they have to battle it out to the end. You know, and then 3 of them live at the end. You know, that kind of story. You know, what would you do different in these stories? You know,
sure.
That's not a bad show. I'm not saying we have to do that. I'm saying that's a good idea. You know,
I like it. I love these. Also, too, because I believe they're thought provoking. So I think it makes for some right. Because like, don't get me wrong, I love the fucking dick and shit stories as much as the fucking next dude, and they make me laugh. They make me giggle and chuckle and whatever. Right. But the thought provoking stories where we're you know, delving into a thing, I think that's where you really get some of the really good shit.
It's definitely where you get the interesting conversation. For Scotty and I, it helps because we're killing 2 birds with 1 stone here. We're getting to actually game plan some things, and you're welcome to help us with that too, as much as you want to, because you know it's an enormous project, and we need all the help we can get putting the pieces together.
Yeah, sure, I'd love to.
When you hear the scale of it and all the different things that we have in there, and you kind of need them all to interact, it's huge. It's we need help.
Yeah. And I think especially in those kind of scenarios, especially when it's a small number of people that's doing most of the legwork of the brainstorming and whatnot, it's easy to get so caught up in you knowing the story like the back, like that you don't necessarily see some of the things that are right in front of your face,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And that's where
Absolutely.
like the secondary people or the, you know, whatever, like myself or whatever, can kind of be like, well, what about this? How does that tie in?
Right.
And who knows? Maybe you guys are like, oh yeah, actually that'll tie in and blah 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 blah. Or it could be one of those, oh shit, yo, you're right, that doesn't, or something like that.
Right. Exactly. And that's you know, you need all that. If you could have everything mapped out before you actually start putting the pen to paper, the writing of it is actually winds up being easy. But you got to put it together. But I like these topic things, and I don't really even care if we have it where the show, like if there's some of those articles that are like, yo, you got to read this. You know, yeah, absolutely. Now I did
still, you know, a trip behind the fourth wall for a second. We still share all these goofy fucking stories with each other, and make fun, you know, like in our little chat thing when we're, you know, filling each other in on what's going on and all that kind of shit. And they still make me giggle, and we still have goofy comments back and forth to each other. You know?
Yeah. If there's one that you really want to talk about, like it's funny, like that's fucked up. Did you see that one? That's fucked up. Yeah, like and I think it's a lot better moving forward. Do we have a topic like this so we can have an interesting discussion? But we still share those, and if at any time there's one that you want to talk about, yo, did you see this one? And just bring it up. Any one of us could just bring up one of the news stories, and they're all out there. But as long as you have a topic, it's like we're almost 2 hours.
Yeah.
We're almost 2 hours. So
and again, we're just shooting the shit and all that kind of stuff.
Right.
You know.
Anyway, because we're almost 2 hours,
more focused, but the second half, just, you know, it's fun.
That's just how it tends to be. But because we're at 2 hours, we gotta, you know, cut it out now.
Yeah, sure.
Any last words, fellas?
I love you, man.
There it is.
Careful in the fucking fabric of time.
Yeah. Who knows? I could be lost.
Yep, you definitely don't want to gamble and lose. Well, folks, check us out on YouTube and SoundCloud, Mad Team C, The Garage, and check out our books on Amazon, The Mad Dose Presents, any of them. You know, the more money you give us, the more money we can put into the show.
This is when we get the fancy graphics, I can stand here like this.
Exactly. Right, with that
book will just appear above my hand.
With that exact face. I'm glad I'm going to get that in the video.
Anyway, they're probably going to fucking reject it now.
That's true. It's definitely sexual innuendo there.
Oh my god.
Yep. On that note, have a good night, folks.
Later.
All right.